Looking for the perfect hidden gem for your next night out? Welcome to Almost on the Lake, where the food is delicious. The service is top-notch. And the atmosphere feels like home. Family-owned and locally loved. Come see why everyone is talking about Almost on the Lake.
Nestled in the heart of historic downtown Wilkesboro, the 1915 offers a wedding experience like no other. Once a federal courthouse and post office, the 1915 combines rich history with timeless charm. From intimate gatherings to full-day rentals, we provide the perfect backdrop for your most cherished moments. With indoor and outdoor options, bridal and groom suites, every detail is crafted just for you. Make your wedding unforgettable at the 1915, Wilkesboro's historic wedding venue, where your story begins.
Closed captions for this episode of Life in Wilkes is brought to you by Deal Insurance Agency in Wilkesboro, an award-winning, experienced, family-owned and operated agency with service and coverage that goes above and beyond expectations. Join us on a captivating journey as we explore the charm, history, and vibrant culture of Wilkes County. Discover the hidden gems, inspiring stories, and remarkable people that make Wilkes a place worth knowing and celebrating.
Good morning, Melanie. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so great to see you. I first got wind of you some years ago because of your horse sanctuary, I suppose. And I thought it was fascinating. It was just time there were so many things going on. And now is the right time for you to be here. So we certainly know about your books. We know about your rescue efforts with horses. And we're going to tell everybody about that.
Okay.
But before we get into that, let's tell everyone about you. Introduce yourself, who you are, and tell us where you come from and about your people.
Oh, goodness. Well, I was born and raised in Michigan and followed my parents in my early 20s to Florida and spent the next 30-some years there. I earned my living as a firefighter medic.
Oh,
I was
great.
the first female to make it through the academy that I attended. This was way back in the dark ages.
And where was that?
Sarasota.
Okay, in Sarasota.
And there are, of course, hundreds of women in the fire service now, but back then it was unusual. And
You were a trailblazer.
it was a great career. I loved it. And the only woman in a department of over 200 men, great place to find a husband.
Right.
So
Right.
while my husband and I were working, he was also a firefighter, at the fire department, we moved out to the country just as a way to get away from the stress of the job. Mm-hmm. Great job, but it was stressful. And everyone around us had horses. I was not a horse person, but I became very intrigued with them and came home one day and said I wanted to get a horse. And
Wow.
my husband was rather shocked. He said,
Right.
Where'd this come from? You don't know anything about horses.
Right.
And in my search for a horse, just simply to go trail riding, I discovered a lot of abuse and mistreatment. And that was what kind of sparked my inspiration
You mean
for the
from
sanctuary.
the horses you were looking at? You'd see an ad for a horse for sale. You'd go and you'd see things you didn't like.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Was there? Well, let's back up a second because this is something that you discovered as an adult. So, was there anything in your childhood? Were your folks or anybody in the family were they horse people or?
No.
No?
I did not grow up around horses, and believe it or not, I was not a horse-crazy kid, like most little girls are.
Did you read a book about horses? Did you see a movie? Did you watch anything?
Well, the normal stuff, Black Beauty or
Right.
whatever, but
The Long Ranger?
that kind of stuff, yeah. But as far as being immersed in the equestrian community, not at all.
No. No? And had you ridden a horse as a child?
I only had gone horseback riding once with a girlfriend, just
Okay.
once.
Okay. All right. So
It just really sparked something in me.
right. All right. So it sparked something while you were so you were at that time in the fire department.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're a firefighter medic, right?
Mm-hmm.
At that time, you tell your husband, "I want a horse." He's like, "What's wrong with you?" and then you start looking for horses, but in the looking to find your horse, you saw a lot of things that you didn't like. So
Correct, yeah.
Wow. So it was at a time. Let me get this right. So it's at a time when you, as a firefighter, you knew how to fix problems, right? That's all you do is fix problems, right?
Yeah.
Nasty problems.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, bad problems, wrecks, fires, all these bad things that go on in the world. And so take us from there. You saw there was a problem. Tell us about eventually finding your horse, and then what you started to do.
Well, my initial looking for a horse was because I just wanted to go trail riding with friends and neighbors that we were surrounded by. And I bought a horse who could not have been the worst match for a novice.
Oh.
She was a mare, and I was very inexperienced in every sense you can imagine. And I brought home a horse that she wasn't well trained. She was off the thoroughbred track. She was sickly. She was unhealthy. And everyone said, so I made a huge mistake.
Right.
And that's what we do in life, right? We
Right.
make mistakes and we move on.
How many years ago was this?
Oh, gosh, towards 40.
Wow, so this was before YouTube. So you didn't have YouTube to go look at, right?
Oh, this was before everything. Before smartphones,
Right.
Google, everything.
Right.
Yeah. But everyone told me to get rid of her, but I'd fallen in love with her. And I decided it wasn't her fault that I didn't know how to ride. It was my fault.
Right.
And it was my responsibility to correct that. And so I began educating myself. And I eventually found a second horse who was a good match for a novice. He was very well trained, very sweet, gentle, easy horse. And I actually never rode the first horse again. I never tried
Ever.
to ride her. I kept her.
Right.
I just let her be. But I rode the second horse I bought. But
How was that? You you had the first horse that had some issues. You didn't know how to fix it, but you had a big heart. Was there a moment in time that you've got the second horse now, right? And you're enjoying that experience? Let's talk about that, and then I'll ask you the other question. So that first ride on the second horse, talk about that and how that was fulfilling for you and just that whole experience.
Well, interesting enough, I didn't enjoy riding even a well-trained horse who was gentle.
Okay.
It was, yes, it's a very strange evolution how this happened. It really is. I decided I did not really care about riding, but I wanted to devote my life to horses in a very different way.
Interesting.
And it's sort of hard to describe. I just didn't find it fun. Riding was not fun, but I loved the horses.
So you got a horse now that you can ride, and then you do it and you don't like to do it. So how does the horse say, "Hey, what's your problem, Elaine?"
Well, I don't think horses care about being ridden. I don't think, they don't need a job. They don't
Right.
need, I don't think they care about being ridden at all. They're horses. They know how to be horses without our intervention. They just need, what can we do for them? We need to feed them because we've got them confined in fences. So we need to feed them. We need to take care of them, and we need to tend to their health care. But as far as needing a purpose beyond being a horse, they don't need that.
All right. So your pragmatic husband, of course, comes home. You're telling him the story about, hey, I rode the horse today. How'd that go? Well, funny thing. So how'd he respond?
Well, it was really more than one ride.
Right.
I spent a couple months going out trail riding with friends and neighbors, and spent several $1,000s on trying to find the right saddle, and thousands and thousands of dollars on fencing and everything else that we did. So, but he is a huge animal lover, and he was also. It didn't really faze him that. Okay, you've got these saddles now. And we've done all this, and so now what? That didn't really cross his mind too much.
All right. Good.
We were enjoying the lifestyle of living in the country and being surrounded by animals, and by that time we had quite a few dogs and some cats, and then the horses, and then I also brought home a little pig who needed a home. So it just kind of kept evolving.
So now you've got the farm, you've got a horse, you get another horse, you ride. That's not the best thing. But then you when did you realize that maybe you've got this obsession of collecting and taking care of animals because you kept getting more and more?
Well, by the time we were on 5 acres, my elderly father was living with us. I'd lost my mother. My mother had passed away. And my father was in his 80s, and he wasn't doing well. And he moved in with Jim and I, with my husband and I. And I was raised to believe that we are happiest in life when we take the focus off ourselves, when we find ways to give back without expecting anything in return. And that's the way my father was.
Okay.
And my father was very, I never saw him walk across a parking lot without picking up trash. He just, and that wasn't, no one saw him do it. He was just, that's the kind of man he was. He just gave back. We'd go into a restaurant and a door was hingy, not working right. He'd go out to his truck and get a tool to fix it at the restaurant we're eating at.
And without even being asked to do it.
No.
He would just fix it.
He would just say to the owner, hey, I think I can fix that for you. Mind if I try? Sure, go ahead. But that's just the kind of guy he was. You give back without expecting anything in return.
Well, talk about that. As a child, you witnessed this happening, right? So was there a moment that behavior began to leach over into your being, and you begin to pick up some of those traits?
I think that's hard to pin down as a child, probably, but it was just the way I was raised. It was, I
But later on, it would definitely show up.
Yeah, it made an impact for sure. He would just say that a lot. He would say, this life we're given isn't really about ourselves. It's about how we can make the world better. So he said things like that a lot. Excuse me.
And your mother?
Oh, yeah. Lovely, sweet, wonderful person.
Right.
I was
nurturing.
Very, very lucky with the parents that I had. But when my father died, Jim and I were sitting outside watching the horses, watching the sunset. I was very, very crushed over my father's death, and I'm still grieving. And I looked over at Jim. We were on 5 acres, and I said, I'd like to open up a sanctuary for at-risk horses. And all he said was, we'll have to get more land. Because by that time we had 4 horses.
Right.
So we bought 50 acres a little further out.
In Florida.
Still working at the fire department. And we became a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and it just snowballed. We started working with law enforcement all across the country, actually, with abuse cases. And
how'd that work? When you say you started working with them, how did you work with them?
Investigating an abuse case.
Okay.
A lot of, just because you're in law enforcement or you are enforcing animal cruelty laws doesn't mean you know a lot about horses.
Okay.
So they would call in, by that time, I'd become very, very knowledgeable about horses.
Okay.
And so you just come in, is this horse in trouble? Yes, the horse is emaciated, and yes, we need to get a vet in here, and this horse needs to be confiscated, and this horse needs feed and hoof care and mouth care and so forth and so on.
Wow, so you would go in almost like a criminal veterinarian knowledge type person.
Not on any level of a veterinarian, but
no, but
yes,
you could tell if there was abuse
absolutely,
there.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, was a lot of that emotional that you could tell, how a horse would respond if it had been abused?
Oh gosh, yeah. I've seen some gruesome things.
Why do people do that?
I don't know. I get asked that all the time. How can someone not see a horse emaciated? How do you not see it? And I think it's difficult to find an answer. I'm sure it's some sort of, there's got to be some mental illness there. There's got to be some callousness that's in overload. It's very difficult to say why this happens or how someone can just turn a blind eye to.
Yeah, it's complicated, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you would have those consultations with people literally across the nation?
Mostly local.
Okay.
Even an hour, 2, 3 away.
Right.
But some in other states. Yeah. I traveled out to New Mexico once with a case. Back then, there weren't a lot of. There's hundreds of rescue organizations now, but back then there weren't a lot, and there's some really, really terrific ones, great ones, and there's some that aren't reputable. But it was difficult to get someone who did active rescue work to go help law enforcement evaluate a situation. Not so much anymore.
When you were helping in that scenario, Melanie, were you sometimes part of the solution and not just saying, hey, this is this situation as I see it, and did you become the answer also, not just giving advice, but actually being able to take the horse in?
And networking. We took in, I helped with a thoroughbred farm. There were probably in the 20s, 20-some horses there, all of them emaciated, absolutely, utterly emaciated. And this was $1 million thoroughbred farm. And the woman was just ignoring it. Her husband had left her. She was just ignoring that horses weren't eating. And yes, I went in and organized other agencies with trailers. We all came in. There was about 7 horse trailers there. And I networked and organized who would take, you take these 3, we're going to take these 3. You take these 4, so forth and so on.
Right. Now, when
did that a lot.
When you would take them in, did you become their forever home, or are there situations of where they're with you for a while and then someone else adopts? How does that work?
There are different situations. Organizations, some are. They simply bring horses in, rehabilitate them, and adopt them out. Mm-hmm. We are one of the very few true sanctuaries in the United States. Once a horse comes to us, they stay with us.
Well, obviously, the issues with abuse and neglect, it's a problem from the past, but it still exists today, right?
Yeah, I started the sanctuary over 30 years ago because we were failing our horses, as a country. And I wanted to make a difference. Started the sanctuary. I wrote 3 books about the sanctuary, nonfiction.
What were your first books?
The Horses of Proud Spirit, Hoof Prints, Stories from Proud Spirit, and The Dogs of Proud Spirit. All addressed real life stories from the sanctuary. And I hoped my books would make a difference. I think they have. I've been on radio, television. PBS filmed a full-length documentary about us. Mm-hmm. But 30 years later, we're still failing our horses.
So, well, wait a minute. That's a big thing to say, right? So, has the problem gotten bigger, or is it remaining just more people have horses, and because more people have horses, the percentage of abuse is relatively the same, or is it I don't know the numbers.
Well, I don't think it is. There's abuse, but the big problem is people getting a horse. I think this is one of the biggest problems in the equestrian community. People bringing home a horse for the kids. Mm-hmm. The kids get bored, or the kids go off to college, and the parents don't want the horse. There is a huge problem in this country with this, not making a commitment to a horse you bring home.
It's a lifelong commitment, isn't it?
Yeah, but people don't take it. Too many. Right. I don't mean everyone. Too many people don't take it that way. So the horse ends up languishing in the backyard, in the back pasture, or the most horrible thing you can do to a horse is take him to an auction. So the parents just are going to get rid of the horse or sell the horse to someone that they don't know, and they don't know if the horse is going to be taken care of.
Right.
It's an irresponsibility is what's going on.
All this stuff is going on down in Florida. Something happened, and for you and your husband, and you're like, there's a great place up in the Carolinas. Why don't we take a look at that? Let's transition us from Florida and get you up to the Carolinas. And how in the world did that happen? Because you'd already bought more land in Florida, right?
Correct.
So did you leave that sanctuary there and somebody else rented, or did you load up and the whole lot of you come to North Carolina?
Well, when we retired from the fire department, we knew we wanted out of Florida.
Okay.
We were tired of the heat, and we always wanted to be up in the mountains, but we could not find anything we could afford. We had our herd numbered in the 70s.
Wow.
And not quite at that time. It was a little bit lower at that time. But we could not find anything we could afford. But we loved it up here. All my life, as a teenager, I dreamed of living in the mountains. And so but we wanted out of Florida. Couldn't find anything up here. We ended up in Georgia. Okay. We bought several hundred acres in Georgia.
Okay.
And the sanctuary continued on. We moved all the horses from Florida to
Georgia.
To there. And then, as we're getting older now, we made the decision to step away from active rescue work. We've been doing it for 30 years. Getting older, decided it was the responsible thing to do, to kind of step away from active rescue work, quit adding to the herd. And so as we were in Georgia and the herd began to dwindle, just old age, we made the decision, it's now or never, let's try to get up to the mountains.
So you start looking again? So
we started looking, and because of the intensity of the work the sanctuary requires, we really don't go on vacation. We haven't been on a real vacation in 20-some years. Little weekend getaways, but little tiny weekend getaways were always up here. So I said to my husband, let's live where we would want a vacation.
There you go.
Then we don't need a vacation. So I came up again. Again, the herd had dwindled quite a bit. And I came up numerous times by myself looking at property and found 50 acres here in Wilkesboro. And I'm standing on the property with the mountain views, and I can see Grandfather Mountain.
Wow.
And I called my husband. I said, I know you haven't seen this place, but I'd like to make an offer. This is it. It's 50 acres. The house is a little fixer, but that's okay.
Right.
And I showed him the picture of the view of Grandfather Mountain, and he didn't even see it. And we made an offer.
Wow. Wow. You had seen it, though.
Oh, yeah. I was standing right there, and I said, this is it. So we moved just about 5 years ago, a little over 4 years ago.
Okay.
And again, the herd had really dwindled, but we were committed to the horses we have.
Right.
We're just not adding to the herd anymore.
So you've got 50 acres in Wilkes County?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So 50 acres in Wilkes County. And how many horses now?
Well, again, we've dwindled even more. We're just down to 12.
Okay, 12 horse. Well, a lot of people still think that's quite a few.
Yeah,
so.
it feels like the pastures are empty, but I have to reconcile with that.
Right. So now you've got a small herd of family. You and your husband are here, and you started writing again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So had you actually stopped writing? Because there was a lot of stuff going on from the earlier books to where you are now. So talk about that creative process and the book writing and your, how it started, and then where you are today.
Well, it started when I would just write down the stories of the horses as they came to us.
Okay.
It was cathartic for me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really intend on getting published.
So like a journal?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I showed the stories to a close friend, and I truly did not think about getting published. But she said to me, her exact words were, "You need to get these published." Mm-hmm. And this was way back when, no Google, no anything. Right. I didn't know how to get published. How do you even do that? And I started tried to find authors who would talk to me and mentor me. And I queried a publisher. I put the stories in a better manuscript form, right. Cleaned them up, sent them off to several publishers, and one offered me a contract.
Wow.
And it was a little harder than that. It wasn't quite that easy, but that's
the gist of it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And they wanted a second book and then a third book. And by that time, I'd just become kind of weary of writing about animal abuse. And
Why? Why did you become weary?
It takes a toll.
Okay.
It takes a toll. It can be exhausting, just witnessing what animals go through at the hands of man.
So when you're writing about a horse, what's the name of one of the horses?
Cody.
So you're writing about Cody, and you have rescued Cody, so you're aware of whatever the abuse would have been or neglect would have been. So as you're writing about Cody and then all the others, are you saying that you found yourself kind of going through that and thinking about, as you're looking at what happened to Cody, I can imagine that would be heavy. Mm-hmm. So is that it? Just one after another? They're heartbreaking stories, but they have a good ending, right?
Yes, and I always did try to add some uplifting aspects to the stories and bring about the healing process and that kind of thing.
What's your favorite memory of Cody?
This was a mare, and she was just very sweet. Followed me around like a little puppy out in the pasture. Just the minute she saw me, she'd come over to me, and
right.
Yeah.
Is it a little more difficult in telling those stories when, they are sweet like that? They are kind, and they come from that abusive situation.
Yeah, horses are really extraordinary animals. They really are, and they are sentient. They form. I'm always very startled by how many people who have horses don't realize the bonds they form together.
Sure.
They form very, very strong bonds, and it's the disregard for that is heartbreaking to me because, as I said a little bit earlier, as a whole, the equestrian community, we shuffle horses around like furniture. We just disregard the bonds they form.
Right. So after the first 3 books, and you begin to get all sorts of responses and all sorts of things were going on, you took a little bit of a break from writing, didn't you?
Yeah, I was a little weary of everything, and I needed to step away from it for a little bit. But then I started thinking, well, I've done all these things. I've written these books. We've been on the PBS documentary, and what else can I do?
Let me ask you something before you go there. The PBS documentary, because that was a big thing. Talk for a moment, before we move forward, talk for a moment of what that experience was like for you, your husband, that whole experience, and then once it aired, what the feedback was.
Oh, it was very strange situation. Being the film crew followed us around for a week.
Right.
So we had microphones. An entire film crew at the property for a full week, being interviewed and just following us around. And so it was very interesting, but very strange too.
Right.
So yeah, it was. And the PBS documentary, it aired nationwide, and it won an Emmy.
Right.
So that was fun. Nothing to do with us, but that was all on the producer.
Sure.
And then I kept trying to think, what else can I do to make a difference in the equestrian community? And then I thought, kids. I need to reach kids. And that was the inspiration for wanting to write the 2 children's books.
Okay. So this was after your first book.
Well after all 3 of them.
Okay, the first, second, and third book.
Yeah.
Then you've got your national exposure, right?
Yeah.
With PBS. Well, wait a minute, 1 second. So for those who are following, and for my curious brain, were you still a firefighter at that time, or in the U.S.?
We had retired.
Okay, so you just retired.
We had retired, and we were able to retire quite young. We were just in our 40s still.
Okay.
So that's when we moved to Georgia, several hundred acres.
Did you get any calls from your buddies in Florida who said, "Hey, I just saw you on PBS"?
We did, actually.
Did you? It's kind of nice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you've got these stages in your life before you're making these big moves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the kids' books come up. Talk about that and what that journey was like, because that was a departure from the first books, right?
Very, very different. Yes. It was. These books were a joy to write. And I just wanted to create a character that might resonate with kids. And when I was a young girl, reading the Little House series, I wanted to be Laura. And I thought, can I create a character that kids would want to emulate? And so Kip in the books is a huge animal lover. And I hope that I've achieved that. I hope children read these books, young people, young boys and girls, and say, I want to be like Kip.
Right. Was there a little piece of you in those books?
Kip is so me.
Nice. Going through it, were those books more enjoyable for you to write than the first ones?
A total joy to write. I wrote both of them. I wrote the first one, Liberty Biscuit.
All right, so that's this one, right?
Yes, I wrote that one in 3 months.
Okay.
And I didn't have a publisher, but I started researching what might be a good publisher, and I queried a few of them. This one offered me a contract, and I had no intention of writing a sequel. I was going to write more books, but I was going to move on from that, from Liberty Biscuit. But the publisher and quite a few people said, we need a sequel.
So you were hearing that from readers?
Yes. Okay. And I had no intention of writing a sequel. Excuse me. I got so much feedback about wanting to know what happens to Kip. We need to know more. And what happens to Uncle Henry? We need to know more.
Right.
So I sat down, and that book just really flowed out of me. Again,
and that's Little Pearl.
Little Pearl. And I wrote that one in 3 months. And it just flowed out of me. It really did. It's hard to describe because writing can be quite a chore. It can be a lot of work.
It definitely can be. But when you're on a path for something that feels good to you.
Yes.
And it sounds like these books felt good to you.
Oh, they did. I'm very proud of them. I'm not ashamed to say, or I can very, very honestly tell you, I really love the stories.
Talk about the feedback. I mean, you talked about some, obviously, from the first one. People are like, we want to know more. Well, what about Little Pearl? What are people saying about this one?
Getting very good feedback. it's there's a fun little mystery and some family secrets and a little evolution of the young protagonist. She is growing up a bit, and her journey, and she brings home some horses who need help. The first one is mostly about a little donkey she finds.
Oh, nice.
A bedraggled little mischief maker who gets into his own little shenanigans.
Donkeys are great, though.
Well,
And mules. Well, they can be tough. But
donkeys, they are so misunderstood. They
Yeah.
really are. They're wonderful animals.
Right.
They're loving. They love people. Donkeys are very underrated on how cool they are. They're
Yeah.
really cool animals.
I think so. I think so as well. And mules. They say mules are actually smarter than horses. They're like one chromosome off or something. They're
They're super smart.
Yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe you can have too many chromosomes. I don't know. Wow. So you got these 2 books. Now you're in North Carolina. Now,
Yes.
did these come out in North Carolina? Okay. So this is since you've been here in the Carolinas.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? You were down in Florida. Now you were firefighting while you were there and rescuing people, and then you go to Georgia. And were you still in that industry then when you moved to Georgia?
The firefighting?
Right.
No, we were retired.
Okay, so you retired there.
Yeah.
That's right. So in Florida, your professional career there, you started writing. Georgia is a great home to you for a while. But the thing that you had been craving for many years, right, is your place in the mountains. And you found not only the Carolinas, you found Wilkes County. How is life? How do you and your husband feel being here at this stage in your life? Is this like finally we're here?
Absolutely. It's difficult to describe. I love it here. Again, I spent most of my adult life in flat, hot Florida,
Right.
and a little bit less flat, hot Georgia.
Right.
But I've always felt like I'm deep down in my soul, I'm not a flatlander. I'm a mountain girl.
Right.
Even though I was not born and raised in the mountains, I just feel like I'm home. I really do.
We hear that a lot from people when they retire here or find this at whatever period of their life, relocating for business, or is that it's the people are great, the environment is also great.
Mm-hmm. The terrain just appeals to me. I feel like I'm home, and we do love it here. We just, we've made some terrific friends, and we love the boroughs, and we love this area, and really.
Do you believe the mountains make us better people?
Yeah. I don't know. There's just something about, it's hard to find the words. It really is. It's just, I don't know. There's just something about the terrain, the
photography being different,
Yeah.
and things just let your emotions kind of free flowly, and then also you can relax.
Yeah, I think, we're all walking a path, and I think that we can do things together and make a difference, but our path is still our own, and it's just, there's something very magical about the foothills and the mountains.
Yeah, well, we're certainly glad you've made this your home with such an incredibly colorful background, and we've got now 5 books that are published, right? Mm-hmm. I understand there are more, but haven't been published yet. So let's talk for a moment quite specifically about how this region is doing its magic on you, and what do you imagine will be your next projects that will find their way to print?
Well, I just finished another manuscript. It's not in production yet.
Right.
The world of publishing turns very, very slow.
Sure.
So I don't know when it'll be But it is another, nothing to do with these two books.
Okay, so Little Pearl is not in it, and Liberty Biscuit, they've been...
Yep, they're done.
They're done, okay.
They're out in the world, and they need to make their own way now.
Right.
But the next book is similar, but not the same.
Right.
It is about a young girl who is growing up in the city, and she gets sent to live with her grandma in North Carolina on a horse farm, and this teenager is resentful. She loves her gram, but she doesn't want to live in the country, and she doesn't like horses.
Wow.
If you can believe that.
Wow.
But, of course, so we have a resentful teenager, and we have a strong grandma who loves horses, and these two come together.
They say that we who write often allow pieces of ourselves to submerge into the pages somehow. So are you the little girl or the grandmother?
Now
this
I'm the
time?
gram.
Okay. All right. All right. But you relate to the granddaughter. You relate to that feeling of a little bit of rebellion, maybe?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Life's interesting that way. Talk about why your life is better with equine intertwined in your life. Why are horses important to you?
Well, I think a lot of it is because of a lot of the misconception that horses endure at the hands of man. And I think that making a difference in their lives has been very rewarding in more ways than I can even say. Just kind of going back to my dad and just to give back to something that can't do anything for you, but where you don't expect anything in return, giving back to the world around you, trying to make the world better. And if you're passionate about something, you have to pursue it. You have to put yourself into it. And horses, to me, are some of the most misunderstood animals. I really feel that way. Even experienced horse people.
Which sounds odd to say, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Or it sounds odd for me to hear. Well, wait a minute. Experienced horse people, you would imagine the more experienced you are, the more connected you would be to this animal you're partnering with on either performance or hunting or just riding. But not so.
Not always, of course. There are some very, very conscientious people. Of course there are. But I keep going back to the disregard that of the bonds horses form. I don't think people put enough emphasis on it or acknowledge it enough. People buy horses. They're not right for the family anymore. They sell them. You know, if you've ever heard two horses being separated, they scream for each other. Literally scream. And another example is I was speaking with a friend who'd had horses her whole life. She'd had horses way longer than me, lived with them. And we were walking across our field one day, and she made a comment about the jackets we were both wearing. We were both wearing fluorescent jackets. And she said, "Jesus, I wonder what the horses think of us coming at them with these jackets on." I said, "Well, horses are colorblind, so..." And she said, "What?" And I said, "Horses are colorblind." And she said, "I didn't know that." And so we have a responsibility to understand how horses function in the world. And when you're asking a horse to go through a stream and lope over a log, or approach something that has a very bizarre color, and they balk or it startles them, and I hear people say, "Oh, you stupid horse," or
Right.
whatever, make some horrible comment about the horse. You're not allowing the horse to process what's in front of him. They don't see the way we see. They can't see directly in front of them. They have to put their head down to step over a log. They have to, what we see is not what they see. And when you disregard that, and expect your horse to just do as you ask. And a lot of very well-trained, trusting horses do just do what they're asked. But that's what I keep looking at is it is our responsibility to understand how they see, how they hear, how their feet work, how their teeth grow.
Have you become a better person because of the horses in your life? You know, that's because I'm listening to what you're saying, and for a moment I closed my eyes and I was thinking about, I'm hearing you talk about the horse, but I'm thinking about my dog. I'm thinking about how close I am, and I would never. I know my pet so well. I don't even call him a pet. And I know him so well that, and I always have, you know, and dogs I've had in the past, it's like they become part of the family. And you know the personality, you know what they like, what they don't like. And we do things to accommodate them. Mm-hmm. So a horse is a much larger animal. And is it because they are so much larger and they're used more for utilitarian purposes? Often in history, we look back at, you know, the work horses and the hunting horses, and they have different relationships. But I know a lot of horse people who absolutely love their horses. I mean, they absolutely. I mean, I would imagine for every bad person that has bad habits and taking care of their animals, whatever they are, I would imagine there's several more good people. I think there are a lot more good people than people who just don't know or don't care.
Yes, and I do want to make that clear. I'm not trying to disparage, you know, the entire equestrian community. There are lots and lots and lots of good people. I know so many people who would do anything for their horse, and they take beautiful care of them and make it a point to educate themselves about what horses need. Right. And of course, so many good people, yes, without a doubt. I think it's just the, I kind of keep saying it, but I think it's, for me, it's the disregard. It's the shuffling them around.
Sure.
I think that's one of, beyond blatant abuse, it's the shuffling them around that.
So really the absence of a deeper relationship with the owner affects a horse, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So many things. I mean, you know, as I'm sitting here, we're having this conversation, and I know a lot of riders, and we talk, and it's very common to go through periods of riding, and you kind of tap on different things. And let me write these for the kids, and you fall in love with it. It's really, you're in this one a lot more, right? Mm-hmm. So when we talk about animals and animals that are well taken care of and then abused, I think it's really important for us to have this conversation. I almost feel like it's when we're talking about life, whether it's a horse, a dog, a cat, or your companion, mm-hmm. that taking time to be present with that living thing, mm-hmm. is so incredibly empowering, not just to them, but for everybody, right? We're all better when we care.
Oh, yeah, gosh. And when you think about, we, of course, never did any breeding because there's too many horses who need homes in this country. But so, of course, we didn't do any breeding, but we took in mares who had a foal at their side or they were already pregnant. And this is another thing that the equestrian community as a whole kind of disregards, is taking babies away from their moms. We never did that. A mare knows how to wean her own foal.
Sure. And
we were told, we faced a lot of criticism because we never weaned a foal. And that's separating them. That's pulling the baby away, listening to them scream for their mom, and the mom scream for her baby, and you just ignore it and ride it out. I could never understand that. And we never, ever, ever took a baby away from their mom.
not to get too deep into that subject, but when you observed what happened with a mother and her father, when you've got that unit staying together and the weaning naturally happens, the mother does that, the relationship that those two have moving forward, it's got to be different.
Oh, gosh, it's very profound. And a lot of people think the closest bonds in the equestrian world or the horse world in the wild is a stallion and a mare. The closest bond in the horse world is a mare and her adult daughter. That's the closest bond. And
you've witnessed that?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Wow. So many things you've seen and done, and now you're here in our part of the world, and that's such a wonderful thing, Melanie. I'm awfully glad that you reached out to us. I don't know how long ago it was, but quite a while ago it seems like. And now we're sitting here, and it just seems like the perfect timing. So here we are, 5 years. You and your husband said you're having tea up on the ranch with your 12 horses now. What's that morning conversation about? You still have the not-for-profit, right? The organization. So in that morning conversation, are those the things you look at and you talk about? Well, what do we're not going to get more horses now, but I'm sure you'd never say never, right? But that's not your goal. But you do have a goal moving forward, though, right? So tell us just a moment about that before we close.
I don't really have a goal.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, we're just enjoying life, and I'm kind of not thinking about exactly any changes of the future, and I'd like to write more books, but we have been reflecting on our past a lot, on the changes or the effect we've had on the horses and the other animals that have come into our life, and just sitting on the deck now and then thinking about how all this began and the evolution of it all, and I think my focus is just trying to get the word out about the books and
Right.
and hopefully reaching young people that may want to contribute to the world of animals in somewhat the same way that I have, or just making a difference and giving back. And
Right. That's nice. That's nice. Have you seen that start to happen yet? Have you seen the influence of your life and your life story have an impact on others, and you've gotten wind by a phone call or an email or a letter?
Oh, absolutely. I have heard from numerous people over the years, over the last 30 plus years, that they started a sanctuary inspired by my first 3 books. And that was the complete inspiration for it, was because they read my books and they said to themselves, I want to do something like that. So that's very meaningful. Yeah.
Nice. How do people find your books?
Well, our little bookstore here in Wilkesboro has them.
Okay.
They're available anywhere, but I'm a
Okay.
fan of shopping local.
Right, absolutely.
Big time. And that our new little bookstore right up from Dooley's,
Oh, sure.
they carry them. And
great.
the owners there, if someone wants them signed and personalized,
Right.
you can purchase the books there and tell the owners,
And they'll get
and
you'll-
they'll have me come in and I'll sign them. And
Nice.
yeah,
Well, we love that, and then maybe they can even meet you.
absolutely.
That's great. Now, for those who are watching who are not here, right? They're seeing this. How do they find your books?
Same thing. Any bookstore can get them in. If you
Okay.
have a little bookstore in your town, or a big bookstore even.
Right.
I'm a huge fan of supporting indie bookstores. Any bookstore can get them in, or they're available online.
Okay, great. And then people can find out more about your non-for-profit. Where do they go?
Our website is horsesofproudspirit.org.
Nice. Horses of Proud Spirit. Next time you'll have to tell us all about how that came about.
Okay.
Maybe you're the proud spirit, right?
I hope so.
Well, Melanie, it's been great spending time with you, hearing your story, all the way from being a proud firefighter medic to finding your way to retirement, to finding your way in Wilkes County. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're certainly welcome.
Thank you for spending time with us on Life in Wilkes. We value you as a viewer and appreciate when you share the show with your friends and family. Be sure to bookmark our channel and join us again on the next episode of Life in Wilkes.